Hello, everyone, and welcome to the CSM Talks podcast. Today, we have Kaustubh with us, who's currently working as a program manager of customer success operations. And we are going to understand from him his journey of landing this job and some tips from the ones who've made it. Thanks a lot, Kaustubh, for being a part of this podcast and sharing your valuable time with us. I'm really excited to understand your journey here. So, Kaustubh, if you can give us a little bit about yourself and your entire customer success journey so far.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Ankit, first of all, for inviting me on this podcast. I've learned so much from the community over the last couple of years since I've started and started my career in customer success. So first of all, thanks a lot for giving me an opportunity to give something back to the community from where I've learned so much. So just a quick introduction about my career, my background. I started my career with Townscript as a customer support associate, wherein I was looking after tickets and managing support channels and all that. And quickly, within 3 to 4 months, I moved into the customer success role there. And there I managed about 40 customers there. And it was a total transition into customer success from customer support. And since I worked there for about a year or so, that got me more interested into customer success. And the opportunity that came by my way at that point of time was into Smart Carrot, which was a customer success tool itself, which is a buzzword nowadays. And that I thought was a very good place to learn more about customer success, because that allowed you directly to work with a tool that promotes customer success, and as well as the people that you're working with there are customer success managers themselves. So in these two and a half years with these two companies was where, I made it very clear that, it's customer success that I want to do, because it was, I thought, an overlap of what I love doing, as well as something which I probably feel myself improving. I feel myself that, I've got a few skills which, I'm excited to, own more as my career progresses. So currently I'm working with Jisr as a program manager for customer success operations. So it's a role where, it's all about developing a customer success strategy, which makes them ready for the scaling that they are intending to do this year. About, creating strategies in terms of how you can reduce churn, or what playbooks, what automations we can introduce in both the customer success as well as the onboarding part of their journey. So that's about my career summary so far.
Thanks a lot, Costa, for sharing the entire journey. That really gives us a very good insight of how you transitioned, how you started off with support, transitioned into success, and right now into CS Ops as well. The question that I would want to understand for your current job that you are in, you have just joined in 4 months ago. So, what went into identifying an opportunity like this? Because this organization is not based out of India. You are in a purely remote job, which for a lot of people is a golden job, because they would love the remote access of it, and then working with a global organization which is in a closer time zone, I would say, from India. Otherwise, if the company is in the US, you have to do night shifts. What I want to understand is, how did you went about searching for this job from Smart Carrot into Chisel? How long did it take for you to identify this opportunity and then to close it fully?
All right. So we'll have to go back to, where this journey started, actually, the job search journey. So
Hmm.
at Smart Carrot, actually, the thing is, there was a mass layoff and I was a part of it. And that was very sudden for me. That was in June 2023, where, there was suddenly I had to look forward to searching for a job, because that was something that I didn't anticipate as such. I could get the sense that the business was a bit slowing down in the sense that there could come a situation, but the moment it came, it was a bit difficult to tackle. So I had to start searching for another job. But the key thing here is, what worked for me is, first of all, I didn't outrightly start searching for jobs once the layoff happened, because I had worked for about 2.5 years, but the important thing was for me to review the entire journey and to understand where my interests lie, where my passion lies, and what is something that I'm good at as well. Because I see that it's, for me personally, it's also about, being able to sustain what you're doing for a long time. And so it's important to, outline that you need to be good at that, as well
Hmm.
as you need to be passionate or, excited about that. So that is where I of sorts did a quick review of, what exactly is the part that I love doing in customer success, what exactly is the part that I don't love, doing in customer success. So what I realized was that I'm good at crunching numbers. I'm good at, extrapolating data. I'm good at coming up with strategies in terms of, driving initiatives internally, which helps scale the operations, which helps the teams to, do better. And I identified that, customer success operations is one thing that, I can do for a long time. And it also, aligns well with the other part of my life. I
Mm-hmm.
am also, say, I'm a performing musician, and I do a lot of those activities as well. So the thing is
Right.
that being on a customer's time schedule is something that I saw that, what wouldn't work with my
Yeah.
overall goals, not just professional goals. So I
Mm-hmm.
identified this particular space of work as the one that I want to pursue. And in that sense, I began my journey. Saw that whatever is open for these roles, I only applied for these specific roles. But the initial mistake that I was doing is, since I had lost a job, I
Mm-hmm.
was just trying to, rampantly apply anything that falls into my experience bracket and anything that falls into my skills bracket.
Right.
But the good thing that I was doing was, anytime I had an interview with the hiring manager, this one
Mm-hmm.
strategy that I was using was, after the interview, I used to connect with them on LinkedIn. I used to share the personal, summary of the interview. I shared the good parts, and I also shared that, I am, looking forward to the feedback, be it anything else. Even if it's a
Mm-hmm.
rejection, it's still an enjoyable experience. And this continued throughout my journey of my job search. And eventually what happened was, I had given an interview in June itself. And
Mm-hmm.
that connect, translated into this opportunity that, hey, there's
Oh.
another opening here. So
Mm-hmm.
somewhere I would say that it's a game of patience, and it's a game of having a certain, uh, strategy or tactics, and it's a certain set of things that you're constantly doing, uh, to just be there. It's not about doing anything different. It's about continue doing the same things over and over, and just refining and owning as you go along the journey, is my experience.
Understood. So this opportunity that you are currently employed as, you said that you had interviewed at the very mid of last year, that is in June, and
Yes.
after a couple of months, you would have, received a conversation from their end, or a confirmation that there is another opportunity. Had you interviewed for the same role, or was it a different role at that time?
So it was the same role, but at a different company.
Okay,
Now,
got it.
the person who is my reporting manager was working at a
Mhm.
different company at that point of time.
Oh,
And we
okay,
had an interview, we had good discussions, but it didn't work out because of the compensations that I was expecting, and what was
understood.
being offered, because it was also a case of relocation. And to be honest, I wasn't really happy with what was being offered. But
Mhm.
I still kept the connect with the person who had a great interview with me, and that, is totally different from the, budget considerations and all. So those are totally different things. So I
Yes.
still maintained that thing that, it was a good interview, and that somehow translated. I feel that, okay, might have been the case that he must have recalled that, there was a
Mhm.
certain interview that we had, and he reached out to me whenever there was an opening at his end. And it really worked out. you know One might say that it's a chance that, it just happened to open up a role, and he reached out to you. But the other part of it also, like, a little part of it is obviously that, being establishing that connection yourself by taking even a
Right.
small bit of steps.
Mhm.
So that way I would put it.
So definitely, going above and beyond, probably making that relevant connect with somebody, as you mentioned, once your interview is over. Today, 99% of the people who are your hiring managers would be on LinkedIn. So reaching out to them, a message which is on context with the interview, that definitely creates relevance for the hiring manager. They remember you, and if your interview was really good, if they could feel that I can really work with this person, and if unfortunately that job didn't was not able to get converted due to myriad reasons, then in the future you still have an opportunity, because that stays in the mind of the hiring manager. What I would like to also understand is, this hiring manager who reached out to you later on, had he switched organizations, or he was still in the same organization when he reached out to you?
No, he had switched already. So
Okay.
I was still in my job journey,
Mm-hmm.
search. He had switched, you know, probably a couple of months after, or, 3, 4 months after
Mm-hmm.
my interview initially. And then he reached out at the very end of the year, which
Right.
translated. well into this opportunity. So there wasn't any specific discussion or anything that happened in between. So it
Mhm.
was totally, one interview in June and the other one late at the end of the year. So that was
Okay.
how it.
Okay. And when this interview happened late at the end of the year, how many rounds did you go through?
It was just a single round. That was the
Okay.
good part of it. So
Because most of it was done
yes.
previously, you stepped in it.
Absolutely. So the discussion was only about, what's going on these days and
Mhm.
what are your priorities and what are the, so it was totally a conversation more than an interview of assessing the skills, and because that had already happened. So
Mhm.
that is the summary of that interview. It was really a conversation. We were just trying to understand whether, it's a good mutual fit, it's a good thing for my career as well, it's a good thing for him as well. And if everything aligns, we just onboarded quickly. Like the interview just took one day.
Mhm. Oh, that's really amazing. But between your job search journey, before until you got the call from where you are employed currently, how many companies did you ended up applying to and interviewing with?
Oh, so the application number was way over 300, I would say 300, 350 easily. I was just rampantly applying, firstly because of the pressure that I had,
Right.
because I was laid off and I didn't have any, the extension that's been given usually. So
Mhm.
that was a pressure situation.
Mhm.
And that meant that I wanted to land up a job as soon as possible. That was one part of me. The other part of me was struggling to, still find that right opportunity, and it went parallelly. So the number of applications that I put was over 350. Out of them, around I received about 60 calls from the recruiters, and the
Mhm.
interviews that I had with hiring managers was, just about 20 to 25 of them.
Okay. You were in the job hunt phase for about 6 months. During these 6 months, what were the other strategies that you were applying? Because I believe the job search journey is the one where you end up learning a lot of things about yourself as well, about how you are doing. How were you connecting with A, getting feedback on what worked, what didn't work, and B, were you also connecting with other folks in the CS community to understand, what else could work, or if what you are doing is going to help to be helpful or not?
So when it comes to the strategies or what I was, doing this entire period, it was an iterative process. Like I mentioned, I started out with applying for a lot of opportunities, but I wasn't getting that many calls, or, I wasn't getting through a lot of times. And the thing is that even it's very difficult to get feedback, because
Mhm.
there are a lot of people applying and there's a lot of interviews happening, and it's uh, very difficult. If you're being fair to them, it's very difficult to be, giving feedback as well. So what
Right.
I developed the strategy was to try to read between the lines, try to find patterns in terms of what you're saying and what you're saying in the interview, what you're presenting, like what's happening. I'll give an example. There was a period, wherein my resume itself was not going through. I understood.
Right.
I took it as a rejection of resume, because if
Mhm.
you're not getting calls even after applying for, say, uh, 30 of them, 40 of them, 50 of 100 of them, you're not getting much calls, which means that your resume is probably not up to the mark. So I
Right.
went to the drawing board. I asked a few of my mentors, and at that point of time, I wasn't really much involved with the community as well. I wasn't, that much into the professional circle, but I did have a group of mentors or people who, I consider an important part of my career development. And I definitely used to reach out to them very often in terms of, discussing not what went wrong, but rather this is what I feel like,
Right.
I've put like 60 applications and I'm
Mhm.
not receiving any calls, which means that, something is wrong with my resume. And then I would discuss what I'm trying to do with my resume. And then I would take feedback. Like what I found out was, for example, in my resume, I was just trying, like, this is in retrospect that I'm talking. I was trying
Mhm.
to cram a lot of numbers, because that's the buzzword right now. Have good
Right.
numbers, have good statistics, and have those KPIs and all, which, pops the recruiter's eyes. And so I made it, perhaps it was a mistake, or you can say something that I learned eventually, that numbers are just a part of the story. You need to have
Mhm.
that story in place. So I devised a strategy to create a better resume for myself. And that involved three steps. Firstly, when you're trying to summarize your role, what I did was divided into three parts. First is uh, the role or the job description in terms of
Mhm.
what you're responsible for. The second one is what impact you're making in the role. And the third one is what you're proud about. These things might be different. Like you are responsible, like for example, if you're a customer success manager, you might be responsible for onboarding, or you might be responsible for adoption and retention and all those things. Now, those are responsibilities. The other thing is what impact you're making. Now, are you taking any initiatives which perhaps, brings down the onboarding time, or are you, doing an upsell or something? Are you expanding over your existing portfolio? And that becomes the impact. The third
Right.
of that now, third thing is the things that you're proud about. Perhaps these might not be the numbers that make an impact at an organization level, but something that you're proud about. For example, in my Townscript career as a customer support agent, I was really proud of the fact that I took a decision to refund the employees who were complaining a lot about the organizers being missing. That was a case where the organizers went missing, and it came upon Townscript to
Refund the amount.
refund them, and the company didn't have the right. But the thing is, those organizers were absconding since a long time. The queries were escalating on Twitter. I started to refund by just keeping the organizer in the CC because they were not responding anyways. Now this is a decision that I took, and what
Hmm.
it eventually led to was people being happy that at least we have our money safe. Now this might not translate into direct impact, but it's something you're proud about. And when you combine these three parts, which is the roles, the impact, and the thing that you're proud about, you create a better picture of your role. Now it demonstrates your understanding of your role. It also demonstrates the impact that you're making, and
Hmm.
the things that you're proud about also demonstrate how seriously you take your work, because you're genuinely deriving pleasure, or that sense of pride by putting efforts into work. So I
True.
took this data, I put it into ChatGPT, and I asked to summarize this thing into a crisp
Hmm.
resume friendly format, and
Hmm.
made a few iterations, and I saw that a
Yeah.
few things always popped up. Now that would be a part of my resume. So this
Right.
strategy, really helped me at least starting getting the interviews. I was at a
Hmm.
stage where I wasn't getting any calls, but now the resume started to go through. So that this was an example of what strategy I used. So this
I
was an
agree. I agree because when I am looking at resumes of people who are applying for positions, the more important part is storytelling, definitely. Because if you are able to tell a story of what your entire journey has been in an organization, it gives me a lot of a sense of how have you been able to achieve what you've been able to achieve, rather than just listing down numbers. Achieved 90% KPI in retention, so on and so forth. NRR of 140%. These are buzzwords. Have a section within your same resume to put three or four such lines of your achievement down below. But it is very important to understand what you did and how you did it. How were you able to achieve it? So that's a good point. Because one thing I would like to understand: would you be open to sharing your resume with the audience here so that I can put it up in the podcast description?
Sure. So, like, do you want me my before and after sort of a
That
resume?
would be amazing. So the audience who's actually right now in their job hunt journey, or probably in the future, would want to open up for opportunities. They can draw inspiration. They can draw some learnings from this. I would want to go back to your first experience into customer success, which is at Townscript. There, you moved from support role to a customer success role. How did you make that happen? What were you doing in support that you were able to probably demonstrate it in front of the manager or in front of the leadership to make that switch happen into customer success?
Right. So, like I mentioned, there is one roles and responsibility that you're responsible for. Now, this is what you're expected to do.
Right.
If I'm telling you that you need to resolve tickets within a certain amount of time, or you need to have a certain CSAT, now this is a part of your role. This now, even if you do 100 times better, it's still a part of your role, but you're not doing anything different. Looking back, what I felt that I did different was I did a few mistakes. Like I mentioned, I started refunding people. Now that created a conflict. But
Hmm.
only when you do certain mistakes, you do things differently. That is when you're moving upwards. I mean,
Right.
like if I'm able to put my point thoroughly, you can put better numbers, but the only thing that will totally shift is by doing totally something which is different. So what these mistakes did was those created discussions in terms of what we need to do better. Now I put my points like, if you are continuing to not respond to these queries, what will happen is these queries will escalate, and they already started escalating. There were discussions on Facebook, there were discussions on Twitter, and that too in bad light, that even TownScript is not taking any action on that. Now, what I did was I started refunding, and I even met with the account owner of that particular account. And I also had a meeting with the person with the account itself. I mentioned that these are the logs. If you see you haven't, responded to any of the queries, it's been over 6 months. And we then made a policy. We then arrived at a, conclusion of what is to be done in case of such queries. And we mentioned that, if we don't respond within, say 48 hours, we will have to refund. And they had to agree upon that. So these are
Hmm.
the changes. These are the kind of changes that I started to drive in my role as a support person. Now, if you see that that is not exactly a part of the role, but uh, the drive to make any change, because people are losing money. That is something that I really felt bad about when I was trying to just, add tag in the organizer and say that, they will have to resolve. TownScript is not responsible. Even I felt
Hmm.
a little bad because people are putting money. That's one thing. And the other thing is I also created buckets of queries. What is happening? Like, what are the major parts of queries coming from? In support tools that are available, obviously, we were using Freshdesk at that point of time. You can obviously do a data analysis, but even by working every day visually, you understand that there's a certain section of query which need not come up in the support ticket in the first place.
Right.
And I identified those queries. I discussed it with our customer success team as well as the management of our company, that, so I'll tell you how it worked for TownScript. Organizers organize an event.
Hmm.
They they sell tickets. The money stays with TownScript, and after the event is completed, they get the money.
Right.
And for the first time organizer, it was the case that the organizer had to prove that the event is over. He might send some photos or anything. And that is when the
Hmm.
money disbursement happens. And this was not communicated to them when they were creating that account.
Okay.
Right. So the easier thing to do is to respond quickly. That would bring down your response time. The easier thing to do is that, resolve it quickly, or, something of that. But what I did here was I took it upwards. I mentioned that you
Hmm.
need to mention that in the product itself. You need to mention that whenever they're creating the account itself. So they would not
Right.
come to us and they would not question that why are you holding our money back. So this
Hmm.
was another initiative that I took. So what this eventually meant was even in 3 to 4 months itself, they started giving me accounts to handle, because they felt that,
Okay.
it's more appropriate role. And a senior person at that point time was also leaving the company. And so instead of hiring, they just took a bet on me that you can just,
Let's move Kaustubh to customer
yeah,
success and
let's
see.
try. Yeah.
Because you
If
had already set up precedents, right? You had analyzed things and you went beyond your job role to
yeah,
ensure that you are putting customer in the center, right? What you explained that you did with the situation of the payment to the organizers once the event is over, you didn't only looked at, okay, I'll just respond to this, they will understand it, and it gets solved. Rather, you took that as a probably gap in the product and share it with the management. And this is a perfect example of thinking upstream. There's this book that I read about a couple of years ago on how to think upstream, how when you're facing a problem, instead of doing firefighting right then and there, I do not have a problem against fixing those issues right away. Do that immediately because the customer is in distress. But the thing to do beyond that is to think, why did it happen,
mm,
and look upstream and then fix it at the point of origin where this
origin.
distress happened, and then fix it once and for all the customers, so that this never occurs, or even if it does, it's a very rare event. So that, I think, put up that quality of yours, or that initiative of yours, had put up that kind of, I would say, image of yours, that yes, Kaustav thinks and does his job beyond his responsibilities, so he can be a very good example of customer success manager. And I think that's the bit the management had taken.
Probably, yes, because it worked really in my favor, because the senior person also left, like I mentioned. It also created
Mhm.
that opportunity to,
Right.
somehow take that bet as well.
Hmm. Right. Yeah, I think that was really amazing of how you were able to demonstrate how you can take ownership of things, and then do the right things to make sure that it is fixed once and for all. So that was a very good, I would say, um, situation rather. Right now, coming to the challenges and obstacles. Now, since you had been in your journey of job search for 6 months, and as you said, you had applied to about 300 opportunities and got 60 calls from recruiters, which materialized into probably 20 rounds of interviews where you had meaningful conversations. During this time, what were the you also mentioned that it's an iterative process where you identified where the gaps were and
Yes.
you made it better to move ahead in the entire journey. Were there any unexpected hurdles that you were that you had faced during interviews, and if yes, how would you have tackled those?
Yes. So the like unexpected hurdles you mentioned, right?
Hmm.
So the first unexpected hurdle really was the layoff itself,
Right.
because that meant that I had to start searching out of nowhere, without any preparation. But
Hmm.
I would say the most challenging unexpected hurdle was when conversations went in your way, but suddenly you've been ghosted.
Hmm.
That was something which really put me under a lot of screws, because it really questions everything that you're doing. Any if you're doing following certain strategies, if you're trying to learn something, or if you're trying to expand your knowledge, you suddenly hit a wall, and instead of working like a problem solution way, you suddenly have to start doing guesswork, like what went wrong or what is it that you have to do. Uh, it, it throws you off balance in terms of what strategies you're employing. So that was, I think, one of the biggest unexpected hurdles. But what I think helped me in this case was discussions with a lot of my peers, my mentors, my friends, bringing in a lot of different perspectives about, explaining the interview, like this is how it happened, and suddenly they ghosted. So what do you think might have went wrong? And you
Hmm.
have to be, again, very honest about what you are saying, the way you are. And I even used to, after a certain point, even just press an audio record button so that I'm
Hmm.
recording myself during the
Hmm.
interviews. What is the tone? What is the modulation that I'm using? Is it effective enough? Is it sounding dull? I used to share with people who are very close to me, like, do you think this is the problem, or do you think that is the problem? Just
Right.
understand
Getting
different
different
perspectives.
perspectives.
Yes.
Understood.
And through these perspectives, what really happens is that if there are certain things that you feel are the problem, but you don't hear it from any of your feedback peers,
Hmm.
feedback that you take from peers, which means it's not really something that you need to stress about. But at the same time, if there's something which is recurrent in all of these different perspectives, it
Hmm.
gives you a clear idea, कि, I need to just work on that much part of things. So, for example, in my case, what happened was, uh, I used to, like I mentioned, the numbers. The
Hmm.
numbers really didn't make sense, is what a lot of people got a feedback, like gave me the feedback. And they mentioned that
Right.
you've written all these numbers, but the thing is, I don't understand them. Now, they
Hmm.
might not belong to customer success exactly. Like a lot of them were from customer success, but still there was a feedback that it's not making a consistent picture to me. I really need to understand that. Now, the recruiter is
Hmm.
not going to ask you questions.
Right.
They're simply so it's better that you're putting that in a good in a better sense of story. And the
Hmm.
other problem that I also found was, uh, in my resume, there's a big gap between my first employment and my degree. It's a 2 year gap almost.
Hmm.
The second thing that is there is that it's a 2 year stint in, like, one and a half year stint in TownScript, and in Smart Carrot it's a 1 year stint. So
Right.
the question of hopping comes up a lot in those discussions. So these
Hmm.
patterns are something that I got a feedback upon. And what I
Hmm.
realized to them is that these are simple numbers. It grabs the recruiter's eye quickly. Two
Right.
years gap and 1 year, 1 year. So I understood, okay, this is how you can put the good numbers as well. It should be that
Hmm.
obvious to them. So
Yes. Hmm.
these type of feedbacks I only got through the perspectives that I was getting from people who were, you know, understanding what type of interviews I'm giving, what type of resumes I'm sending forward. And
Hmm.
I got these feedback, I collected them, and I made a strategy. And again, like I mentioned, iteratively, it started improving automatically. So the important thing I think in these unexpected hurdles is not to take it on yourself completely. You need to discuss them. You need to have perspectives, and you can eliminate the debris from those discussions, and you can only
Right.
focus on things which are recurrent.
Hmm. Yeah, that definitely is, I would say, a really good example of how you can keep enhancing your entire
Yes.
process or your strategies of job search. Now, during this tenure of your job search, were you ever able to get probably a feedback from, say, an HR or from the hiring manager from where you had received a rejection? Were you able to receive any kind of a feedback from them as to why or what could have been better?
So in terms of feedback, I received none really. I mean, that
Hmm.
was, like I mentioned, one of the biggest challenges. The
Right.
problem, yeah, the problem is that when you, even when you, like, I had an organization where I interviewed for 7 rounds
Hmm.
and suddenly they ghosted. So you can imagine, like, if you're interviewing for 7 rounds and they're not giving feedback, so it's very pointless to, expect feedback. So that is where I decided, like, okay, they are not giving you any. Start reading between the lines.
Hmm. Fair enough.
Start
Yeah, I
recording
think
stuff yourself.
I think that is the alternate for getting or understanding the feedback by yourself by asking your peers,
Yes,
and understanding what is recurrent within all those feedback, what is common, and then focusing on that and
absolutely.
ensuring
Yes.
that that is better. That's great. I think we are almost coming towards the end of our segment. One thing that I really ask all my guests is to understand, how do you know, say you have received the offer from an organization, the compensation is not a factor. You have probably received a compensation which is very close to a number that you had thought of, but still there is a factor. It's a two-way street, right? They are vetting you through interviews, but you
Mhm.
also have to vet the organization that you're about to join or you're about to accept the offer for. What is your process of vetting the organization, understanding how, if things will work, or if the work culture is something that you're going to align with, or if the hiring manager that you're going to actually report into, their working style works with you, how the other employees are currently feeling about the organization. What is your process there? How do you narrow it down? And okay, fine, I've received this offer. I look at the additional things, and then I proceed to accepting it.
So it's like you mentioned, it's a mutual thing. Like the organization is vetting you, and at the same time, you are trying to do the same. So I think it starts there itself. Like the best thing that I started doing was, firstly, be a very less defensive about things. If hard questions are being asked, you don't have to be very defensive about them, and you need to be as straightforward and as to the point, but again honest. It's not that when you say you're being straightforward you can just say whatever you want. You have to be very honest and very accepting about a lot of things. And the first thing that I used to do was understand their reaction. If I am saying something which probably isn't making a good picture of it, how are they receiving it? For example, in a lot of cases, in my case especially, what happened was I came from my first job. There was a larger growth that I experienced as compared to my second one. Now here,
Mhm.
even the portfolio that I managed was a smaller one, and even the responsibilities that I undertook were not as much shining as it was in the first opportunity. So these were the questions that used to come up. Initially I used to be defensive about it, but after a certain point I was just like, this is what it is. I cannot control what work is being given to me. I cannot control the
Mhm.
business that's coming in. And I used to have very candid conversations about it, and I used to understand their perspectives. And the organizations, a lot of times, a couple of them, they used to be very bitter about a few things. Like, for example, okay, which means that they used to make assumptions basically, and
Right.
used to
Mhm.
feel that, okay, this is not something I feel is, you know a good thing. You're probably making some stuff up, or you're just trying to, sound smart or something like that. And I used to understand, okay, this is probably not a place that I want to work with, because I'm putting myself out there. They are putting
Mhm.
this. But if you're not willing to trust me, for example, that is something that, I wouldn't be able to go ahead with. That's number one when I'm interacting. But the other thing, while trying to assess the organization, is just to look at their territory, like growth trajectory, or something that I'm trying to understand from my peers. And if someone is working there, or if there are
Mhm.
people who I know work in a similar space, just try to understand. Or I used to search these products up, try to understand the reviews of the product. I think that was also one of the important things, because if you see that this product is doing well, they're receiving good reviews, it means that it's a good product, first of all. And second is, I also used to look at, the employee trend, number of employees, like are they growing, are they staying constant? Because based on my past experiences, I was a little, I wouldn't say that, I didn't want to, but I was a bit wary of working with organizations who have a flat employee growth chart for a long period, because that means that, it's somewhere close to, downsizing or something.
Or
And
even stagnation, because then probably most of the roles that are getting that people are joining the organization are probably the replacements. That's why
yes,
it's maintaining a flat line. And this information I think is available on LinkedIn if you go to the
yes,
insights or
exactly.
people
So yes, yes,
segment of the
correct.
company.
So that was one thing. And I also used to ask questions in terms of what is the, just exactly as you do in a customer success QBR, what is the organization looking to target in the next couple of quarters or in the coming 2 years? And correspondingly, what is the function's role in that? And correspondingly, what is this team or this role's alignment towards it? And a lot of times I found that, there were not many consistent answers
Right.
in terms of the priorities that they are trying to achieve. If
Hmm.
if you're going to the last round of things and the highest management, they sometimes have found that they do not have a clue about uh, not have a clue, as in they don't consider the role of this particular uh, domain or this particular function that important, and they will, like, there will be a section, your manager will be there, you'll have to exactly do. I didn't get a clearer picture in terms of, you know
Okay.
I could see the thing moving really upward, and in a lot of
Hmm.
other cases, they were outrightly red flags for me.
Hmm.
For example, in one interview, I was asked a question that, let's say I give you a situation that sales has overpromised, and it's a typical question in a customer success interview. Like, sales has overpromised, but you realize that it's something that is not possible, and you'll have to somehow make it up for the client. What will you do in such cases? So I responded that, so first thing is that you inform the client, this is not happening, and it's something that we take and we apologize. That's number one. And I
Hmm.
gave the answer which I felt was something that I've done. But I counter question that, how often does this happen?
Hmm.
Because it's important to understand. And the answer that I got was something that made me a bit, uh, you know
Very.
wary. That the answer that I got was that this is something that frequently happens everywhere, you need to get used to it.
Hmm.
So that
That
was
shows
something
the focus of the
didn't click.
organization
Yes, yes,
on
yes,
are they customer centric or not, or is sales in a better collaboration with customer success? So that is a
exactly.
really good way of identifying of what is the actual attitude of the organization towards these
Yes.
customers.
So now the problem is not that it's happening. The problem is that it's okay to happen. It's something which is
Hmm.
common instead of is something that we're just trying to rectify. So
Right.
that's something that made me a bit wary, and I backed it off. Like, I didn't consider it any further,
Hmm.
because again there were parallel interviews happening. That's a different thing. But these are some things that you understand, in terms of the dynamics. But the important thing is to keep on probing questions. Like, the way they ask you questions, it's
Hmm.
exactly, again, coming back to the question that you missed. The way they ask
Yes.
you questions, you need to be as aggressive and as open and clear about it. If they're taking it
Right.
well and they're answering it correctly, it's good for you. Otherwise,
Hmm.
you're better off in a space where your questions are being answered very
Answered. Right.
uh, precisely and concisely without beating around the bush.
No, I totally agree because I always tell my mentees who are in who connect with me on my mentorship program as to they say that, hey, I have got an offer from this organization, and I ask them, what have you done to vet the organization? Because if you have not listed down your negotiables and non-negotiables, and if you have not vetted the organization based on what your requirements are, it's going to be the same cycle 6 7 months down the line. You will join an
Absolutely.
organization. First 3 months, you'll be extremely happy because you're still learning, you're understanding the product, you're understanding all the nuances of the organization. And once the reality hits you, you realize that I don't think I'll be able to, gel with this kind of a culture or work in this kind of a working environment. You again start looking out for a job. Why
Yes,
go through that entire thing rather than, it's a two-way street. If they are vetting you, if
totally.
they are questioning you on everything you've done in the past and can do in the future, you can do the same for the
Do
organization
the
and
same, absolutely.
understand if it is the right fit. These insights are going to help the audience who's currently looking out for a job in customer success or planning to do that. and definitely your resume, your pre and post resume that you had used the strategy to of storytelling in that's going to be really helpful for the audience. We're going to put that resume as description of the podcast. Take a look at it and understand. Kaustubh, this session was really insightful. Thanks a lot for your time and all your strategies. I'm definitely sure is going to help people, and I'm looking forward to more such conversations between us.
Sure. Thanks a lot for the opportunity, Ankit. It was really fun to explore the journey once again in retrospect. And I definitely wish everyone who is seeking for a job the very best. And I hope that they enjoy this journey and make it through successfully.